Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. You're somewhere around my 350th this sort of thing. And back in the early days when I first started presenting to business groups, I used to hand out my own evaluation sheets. And I was speaking in Chicago that turned out to be a CEO organization that had been together for 37 straight years. And there was one guy in the room who was asking me way too many micro-oriented questions. And after it was about an eighth in a row, I realized this guy could actually hijack the entire presentation. So I said to him, I timed him out, and I said, I want to respectfully decline from answering your question. I slipped him my cell phone number. I said, how about you and I handle this offline? Is that okay? And he said, yeah. Then when they handed in their evaluation sheets, you could score me on a 1 to 5, 5 being the best. He's the only person in the room that didn't give me a 5. He gave me a 3. He wrote on his piece of paper, I gave you a 3 because you didn't answer my question. And literally the guy sitting next to him wrote, I gave you a 5 because you didn't answer his question. And the dude drew an arrow on a piece of paper, right? So what's the true role of the CEO/business leader? What's the true role? And I went around the room a couple of times, and there was one guy who stood up, guy who just sold his company in Milwaukee, stood up, and he was kind of like one of those big teddy bear, patriarch-style CEOs. And there's something I've learned after doing 300 of these. If a CEO stands up and gets that demonstrative, you're probably just better off letting him talk. So I said, okay, what do you got? And he said, well, I was at a recent family barbecue, kind of big in Milwaukee. I don't think it's so big in California, certainly not in New York where I'm from. You know, people like asking your employees to commute to something extra, they're not happy about that. But in Milwaukee, that's a thing. So he said, I'm at the recent family barbecue, and a new hire walks over, and he goes, so what do you do? Well, that can mean one of two things. Either the new hire is too stupid to know who the CEO is, or more likely the CEO is not part of that hiring process. So let's just pretend it's the latter. Sounds more new agey, leadership-y kind of thing, right? And he goes, what do you mean, what do I do? And the guy turns around and starts pointing at people at the barbecue, rattling off their job descriptions and their titles. Kind of impressive. And the CEO paused for a moment, looking at the guy, goes, oh, I get it. He goes, I make sure you have a job in 5 years. And with that, the new hire's jaw dropped. And he went, well, keep up the good work, and then he ran away. So picture, I kind of think they were both right. I think the only real role the CEO/business leader is to make sure they have a job in 5 years. People react to fear one of two ways. They look at the future, get afraid, and then they go find somebody that sounds like he knows what he's talking about the future. That's called an employee. And the other ones look at the future, get scared, and go, I better do something about that. That's called a business leader. So for those of you not currently running a company and want to, I'd caution you that uneasy lies the crown, as they say. In fact, from my surveys, I have the largest survey of privately held CEOs in the country. I beat Ohio State at their own game. I beat the organization known as Vistage at their own game. And one of the points in it was, I asked the question, do you have trouble sleeping at night? 87.7% of my CEOs reported trouble sleeping at night. Now, some of that's prostate problems, not all of it. I want to move the needle on the not all of it stuff, all right? So, and I want you to be able to produce constant and never-ending reassurance. Constant and never-ending reassurance. If the thing I'm saying is important, I'm going to repeat it so you write it down. There's some science behind this. If you write things down, you're significantly more likely to retain it, and if you write it in cursive, you're even more likely to retain it. Not such a good thing for the next generation who doesn't know how to write in cursive. In fact, you guys know who Tom Coughlin is? Had a sign on his office wall. He had a former head coach of the New York Giants. Had a sign on his office wall that said, if I hear something, I'll forget it. If I see something, I'll know it. If I do something, I'll remember it. That's when I switched from reliant on the PowerPoint to a handout to encourage you to write things down so you don't need to call me offline. Now, if you do want to call me offline, I'll take the phone calls. I don't want you to need to. Any economist worth his weight will tell you the economy breaks into thirds. 1/3 of the economy, or this little portion over here, is the government. What they mean by that is the government's power to manipulate interest rates, control money supply, and spend. 2/3 is the population. What they mean by that is the population's power to spend. And then the talking head will concentrate all the rest of the time on the government. So it doesn't take much more than a 4th grade math education to know 2/3 is more influential than 1/3. So ask yourself, why do you see the the 1/3 in the government is covered ad nauseum on CNN, CNBC, Fox News, or wherever you're consuming your news entertainment from. Think about it. It's a transactional business model with the press, isn't it? Right? Are they in business? Yeah. Are they in business to make you money? No, they're in business to make themselves money. What makes them money? Getting you to pay attention to things that aren't important, frankly. Because we are hardwired as human beings to seek existential threats. The number one fear in humanity is walking alone in a jungle at night. Why? Think about it. In our ancestral past, did good things happen when you were alone in a jungle at night? I don't think so. So you are hardwired to fear that. Because there's actually nice ways to die. But it ain't going to happen if you're alone in the jungle at night, right? So we are hardwired to avoid things like that. So what does the press do? Find things that you'll pay attention to and then show those to you. And the real deal it comes down to it is because we're stupid. We are statistically illiterate. It's called innumerate. We actually see global threat statistics and our ancient brain interprets them on a village level. Then we only seek the evidence that proves our incorrect fears correct. Perfect example. You are 5 times more likely to die from a vending machine accident than shark attack. Yet there isn't Vending Machine Week on Discovery Channel for a reason. 50-year-olds earn the most. All right, look at that. That's almost unanimous. 60-year-olds earn the most. Well, we've got a couple there. That's pretty good. Okay, so invest the most. No one's ever said 30-year-olds. I won't even ask it. 50-year-olds invest the most. That's a pretty good number there. That looks majority. 60-year-olds invest the most. Okay, so the long story of this, or short story of it is, 50-year-olds is the answer to all 4 questions. So the first takeaway here is you can tell the health of any economy in the world based on how many people are in their 50-year-old age group, specifically 49 to 55 years old, and you can download that information for free from the CIA. Why is Trump covered? Any tweet tweets out, it's covered ad nauseum, right? It's because we're living in the lowest news time period in the history of the world. Great book on the subject called Factfulness by Hans Rosling. If you're not, anyone here not a reader, like give me some honest answers here. Only a couple? Okay, so Hans Rosling shot a video at the BBC before he died, and it's the coolest video I've ever seen. If you hit YouTube, hit the joy of stats, in 4 minutes, Hans Rosling shows you how the livelihoods of all the inhabitants of every country in the world has improved in the last 200 years, and they do it in augmented reality. It's the coolest video I've ever seen. And he's got this goofy Swedish accent, so it's kind of half funny. It's like the Swedish chef from The Muppet Show teaching you about the world. He's got a really salient argument, though. He argues that our worldview is incorrect. It's basically freeze-dried the day we graduate high school. And that's probably the dirty secret of that is it's really probably the day our teachers graduated high school. So if you're looking for international investing, you probably have an incorrect worldview that needs a little rejiggering. How old were baby boomers when they purchased their first home? 31. How old were they when they fully furnished that first home? Dude, you don't have to laugh. It doesn't have to be Thomasville. It could be like IKEA, Goodwill, or something. How old? 36. So how old are they when they bought a trade-up property, if they ever did? 42. How old are they when they fully furnished that trade-up house, assuming they bought one? 46. How old are they when they bought a vacation property, if they ever do? 52. Now, it turns out this is a starter vacation property. This is the RV market, like cottage by a lake kind of a thing. The dream vacation property market peaks at 67. And how old are they when they purchase a retirement property? It's actually 70. Why'd you say 73? Thank you for your honesty. The reason why I'm asking that is because I'm not sure that this statistic is accurate. They're doing a massive study on it right now, but the government takes their sweet time in these type of things. I believe this is actually a blended statistic. I think it's 55 and over housing and assisted living facility. But frankly, I don't know and I don't care. And the reason why is I have no clients that are in that space. The moral of that statement is, if your clients are in that space, you should know and you should care. The moral of that story is, you need to know the magic age of the end user of your product or service. So if the number is increasing for the next 15 years and you're a residential contractor, what should you be doing? Doubling down. Invest in capital infrastructure, hire, acquire, advertise, grow at grow at all costs, right? What if the number is decreasing for the next 15 years? What should you do? So picture I'm in Brookfield, Wisconsin, and there's an architect in the room. Gave me the best answer I've ever gotten, and I've presented this to over 9,000 companies in the last 6 years. Best answer ever from Brookfield, Wisconsin. Anyone from Brookfield? Yeah, we know it's like the hotbed of intellectual capital in the world, right? So it's like right up there with Stanford and Harvard, right? So this guy's an architect. Now, anyone here deal with an architect? Anyone? Would you ever let him run your company? Universal answer. So I was actually guest lecturing at the University of Cincinnati, and I asked that question to the architecture department. I said, would you ever let an architect run your company? They all said, hell no. So they don't teach business in architecture school, right? So I go, well, if the number's decreasing, so if the number of people 31 to 46 is decreasing for the next 15 years, what should you do? Guy goes, sell my company to somebody who doesn't know that. Dang, that's a good answer, right? Then this guy answers 5 other questions. Brilliant. Best answers I've ever had. So after the 4th one, I'm getting suspicious. This guy's an architect? Get out of here, right? So I put the cap on the marker because this was a workshop I was working with. And after the 5th one, I threw the marker on the ground. I go, dude, come on, tell me the truth. You're not an architect. I go, I bet you're the worst architect in your building. Big smile on his face. He goes, I am. That's why I can run it. What are business models that benefit from the aging of the population? And what are businesses that are classically recession-proof, or recession-resistant is really a better word? So who's likely to thrive during this time period? Think Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the needs of humanity. Remember, there's a human being at the end of the transaction. What are they going to be spending money on regardless of the market cycle, right? So, or you're driving through a rough section of town. Rough sections of town are in permanent recession. So if it thrives in a rough section of town, it's not market sensitive. So list everything, every business model you can think of that's classically recession resistant and or benefits from the aging of the population. Do that now. Once we're done with this, we're going to come back and fill in each other's blind spots. Cool? Let's do it. So you guys get to go first. What do you got?
Housing?
Housing, absolutely. Anything with the word rental in it, right? Anything rental. Because if you lose your home, you still need shelter, correct? Good job. What else you got? Healthcare. Very large category. The hottest categories in M&A right now is healthcare and software. The only way to get a higher valuation in mergers and acquisitions these days is to be in software for healthcare. Right? Absolute juggernaut because of the demographic story. What do you got back there? Liquor. Oh, my favorite category. You were thinking it. Come on. All right, I'm Irish Catholic, so I like whiskey just a little too much. All right, so what the situation is that I'd put that under a much larger heading known as sin. All right, sin does great in recessions because if I'm going to fall into my addictions because my life stinks, right? But what does equally well as sin but is the opposite of sin? Religion. Write that one down. So I'm in Florida and a guy goes, well, how do you make money on religion? And there's some guy sitting over in your chair goes, that's my business model. I go, it is? Okay, so what's your business model? He goes, I'm a liquidator. So as soon as the recession hits, I buy up all the chairs from the hotels because they're not going to be putting on as many events, and I sell them to strip mall churches that spring up because people are bummed out. And then when the market like V's and recovers, those go belly up. He buys back the chairs for cents on the dollar and sells them back to the hotels. Like, that is like sneaky smart, man. And you guys remember the Simpsons movie, right? They're lowering that dome down on Springfield because it's too polluted and they're going to nuke it. And it looks like the end of the world, and then everybody runs out of the church, runs into Moe's Tavern, and everybody in Moe's Tavern runs out and runs into the church. Tell me that doesn't sum up humanity, right? Relationship audit. This is something everybody in this room has to teach their sales force. The current relationships you have. What's the prognosis on the likelihood of their check continuing to cash in the next decade? And what you're listening for are legal weasel words. Kinda, sorta, maybe, believe, think, feel. Feel's a big one for this next generation. You know, I feel like it's this and I feel like it's that. Like that's evidence. No. So what you want to do is approach that, kill that thinking with the most important question I have to teach you here today. But do it the way I'm doing it. No judgment, no eyebrow raised, no like, I know something you don't know, none of that stuff, right? Just adult to adult. So I'm picking on you, Stan, because I know your name. All right, so here's the thing. It's what evidence do you have to support that claim? What evidence do you have to support that claim? What evidence do you have to support that claim? I'm here to help the few protect the many. And here's the thing. You guys gave me two things that are in ridiculous short supply and enabling me to do that. You gave me your time and you gave me your attention. I'm telling you, this is an honor. Thank you so much for having me here today.